Are you tired of harvesting onions that look more like sad little golf balls than the absolute monsters you see at the farmer's market? You do everything you're supposed to. You water, you weed, but every single year, the results are just meh. If you're about to throw in the trowel on growing your own onions, just wait. The problem isn't your garden, and it's not that you have a black thumb. The problem is you're probably making a few common yet critical mistakes that are kneecapping your harvest before it even gets a chance to bulk up. Okay, let's dive in and get to the bottom of this. Alright, the first and arguably biggest mistake gardeners make is underestimating just how much onions hate heavy, compacted soil. You might think dirt is dirt, right? But for an onion, the soil's texture is everything. Here's the science. Onions have a surprisingly weak and shallow root system. Unlike a tomato that drives a deep taproot, an onion has this delicate, fibrous web of roots that barely branches out. Almost all the action happens in the top foot of soil. These roots have no power. They can't muscle their way through dense clay. When they hit a wall of hard soil, they just stop. And the plant's ability to pull in water and nutrients gets choked off. Think of it like trying to run a marathon in shoes that are 2 sizes too small. The plant just can't perform. If the roots can't spread, the plant can't gather enough fuel to build a big bulb. It's that simple. So, what's the fix? You have to give them fluffy, loose, well-drained soil. Before you even think about planting, get in there and work the top 8 to 10 inches of your soil. Be generous with compost or well-rotted manure. This does 2 things. It physically breaks up that compaction, and it adds organic matter that acts like a sponge, holding moisture without getting soggy. Now, if you have notoriously heavy clay soil, one of the best things you can do is just build a raised bed. Even a simple bed that's only 6 to 8 inches high creates the perfect zone of loose soil that onion roots will absolutely thrive in. It's a bit of work up front, I know, but it completely solves the soil problem and pays you back with massive bulbs. Okay, this next mistake is a huge one, and it trips up even seasoned gardeners. If your onions grow a ton of green tops but never actually form a bulb, or if they bolt to flower way too early, it's almost certainly because you're growing the wrong type of onion for where you live. This all comes down to something called photoperiodism, which is really just a fancy term for how plants react to the length of the day. Onions fall into 3 main categories based on how much daylight they need to trigger bulbing. First, you have short-day onions. These are for my fellow gardeners in the South, generally zones 7 and warmer. They only need 10 to 12 hours of daylight to start making a bulb. Think of varieties like the Texas Supersweet or the famous Vidalia. If you try to grow these in the north, the long summer days will tell them to bulb up way too early, when the plant is still tiny, leaving you with pint-sized onions. Next are long-day onions. These are for gardeners in the north, zone 6 and colder. They need a solid 14 to 16 hours of daylight to start bulbing. This gives the plant all spring to grow a massive set of green tops before the long days of summer signal that it's time to build a bulb. If you plant a long day type in the south, the days never get long enough to flip that switch, and you'll just end up with a patch of glorified scallions. Finally, we have intermediate day onions. As the name suggests, these are for those transitional zones in the middle of the country. They start to bulb when daylight hits about 12 to 14 hours. The solution here couldn't be simpler. Find out what type of onion grows in your region. A quick search for an onion day-length map will show you exactly which category you're in. The dividing line in the United States runs roughly from Utah over to the southern border of Virginia. North of that line is long day country. South of it is short day country. Choosing the right type for your latitude isn't just a tip. It's non-negotiable for growing big onions. Onions are thirsty plants, but man, are they picky about how they get their water. Because their root systems are so shallow, they are incredibly sensitive to both drought and overwatering. Getting this wrong is a fast track to a failed harvest. Let's go back to those roots. Since they live in that top layer of soil, they can't reach down deep for moisture when the surface dries out. Inconsistent watering, going from bone dry to sopping wet, stresses the plant out and can cause split or double bulbs. But if you water too much, you're in even bigger trouble. That delicate root system can easily drown in waterlogged soil, leading to root rot. Plus, you're just washing valuable nutrients right past the roots where the plant can't get them. So what's the right way to water? The goal is consistency. Onions need about 1 inch of water per week. The easiest way to check is the old-fashioned finger test. Stick your finger an inch or so into the soil near your plants. If it feels dry, it's time to water. If it's still moist, hold off for another day. And please, avoid blasting them from overhead with a hose. The best methods are drip irrigation or soaker hoses. These deliver water directly to the soil, right where the roots are, without soaking the leaves, which helps prevent disease. It's a slow, deep soak that tells the roots to spread out and ensures the water gets right where it's needed. And remember, as those bulbs start getting bigger, they get even thirstier, so stay on top of it. All right, we're over halfway through, and hopefully you've already had a few aha moments. If this advice is hitting home and you want to keep learning how to get more out of your garden, do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button. It's totally free, it really helps the channel out, and you won't miss any future videos designed to make you a better gardener. Now let's get to mistake number 4. A lot of gardeners toss the same fertilizer on everything, but onions are what we call heavy feeders. They have very specific needs that change as they grow. If you're not feeding them right, you're basically starving them and leaving bulb size on the table. Now, if you remember one thing from this video, let it be this. The size of the onion bulb is directly determined by the number and size of its green leaves. Every single leaf above ground becomes one ring of the onion. More leaves equals more rings. Bigger, healthier leaves equal thicker, heavier rings. Your job is to grow as many big green leaves as you can before the plant starts bulbing. To do that, you need a 2-stage feeding plan. Stage 1 is at planting. The onion needs phosphorus to build a strong root system. A balanced fertilizer with a higher middle number, like a 10-20-10, is perfect for getting them started. Just work it into the soil before you plant. Stage 2 is where the magic really happens. Once your plants have 5 or 6 leaves, it's time to hit them with nitrogen. Nitrogen is pure fuel for green, leafy growth. This is what gives you those big, lush tops that translate directly into a giant bulb. You can side dress your rows every few weeks with a high nitrogen source like blood meal, feather meal, or even something like ammonium sulfate. But, and this is critical, you must stop feeding them nitrogen as soon as you see the necks of the onions start to swell. That's the signal that the bulbing has begun. Fertilizing with nitrogen too late will give you thick necks, which means the onions will never cure properly and won't store for long. So feed them hard and fast for leaf growth, but know exactly when to cut them off. This last mistake is born from good intentions. We all want to squeeze as much as we can out of our garden beds, so it's tempting to pack those onion plants in. With onions, this is completely counterproductive. They need their personal space. Think back to the roots and the bulb. We know the roots spread out sideways, fighting for water and nutrients. If they're too close, they're in a constant battle and nobody wins. But it's not just about what's happening underground. The onion bulb itself needs physical room to swell. Onions don't grow down like a carrot. They form at the surface and literally push themselves out of the ground. If another onion is right next door, they'll just shove into each other, leaving you with smaller, misshapen bulbs. The solution requires a little discipline and a ruler. For nice, medium-sized onions, you need to give them at least 4 inches of space apart. If you're shooting for those truly giant, brag-worthy onions, give them 6 or even 8 inches of room. This means you have to be ruthless when you thin your seedlings. I know, it feels wrong to pull out perfectly healthy little plants, but remember, you're not just removing competition, you're giving the survivors the space they need to become superstars. Besides, you can chop up all those thinnings and use them as delicious green onions, so nothing goes to waste. So there you have it, the 5 mistakes that are probably standing between you and the onion harvest of your dreams. Let's do a quick recap. First, give your onions loose, fluffy soil so their roots can spread out. Second, make sure you're planting the right day-length type for your specific location. Third, give them consistent water, about an inch a week, right at the soil level. Fourth, feed them in 2 stages, phosphorus for roots at the beginning, then lots of nitrogen for leaves, and know when to stop. And finally, give them space to swell up, at least 4 to 6 inches apart. By understanding the why behind how an onion grows, you're no longer just gardening and hoping for the best. You're actively creating the perfect conditions for a fantastic harvest. You now have the roadmap to get past those small, sad onions and start growing huge, beautiful bulbs that will make you proud. Gardening is all about learning and improving. Don't get discouraged by what didn't work last year. Take these tips, put them into practice this season, and just watch the incredible difference it makes. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments which one of these mistakes you might have been making. We've all been there. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Happy gardening and talk soon!